Thank you to everyone for having me. Um, Thank you, Elisa and Scott, for bringing me like to this community. I'm pretty excited about this. I really like trying to think about how to help folks be successful. A lot of folks have helped me be successful along the way, and it's something I'm pretty passionate about. I also want to thank Aaron and Nick and Samira. I spent some time with them last week, getting to know them, getting to remember what it was like to be a student, uh, think about trying to get into finance and hearing things like buy side and sell side and corporate finance and M&A and FP&A and biz ops and all these nebulous sounding phrases. Just trying to remember that. It was really helpful to hear about their stories and think about intern paths and getting that first job. So thank you to you guys. And I thought just, introducing myself so you guys get to know me a little bit, and maybe in the breakout sessions, I'll get to know you guys a little bit more as well. So I'm the head of finance for Workplace. It's effectively kind of like a business unit within Workplace and Facebook, where we're Facebook's first SaaS business, which is software as a service, where we're actually building software and services to help companies that we're charging them directly for. So super different than the ads business. And this is part of like a broader play of providing more meaningful services to businesses. I grew up in New York. I grew up in Harlem in the Bronx. I went to school at another Jesuit institution, Fordham University. And then I started my career in a somewhat traditional path, in like more traditional Wall Street type finance. I was an investment banker at Goldman Sachs, and then I was an investor at the Carlyle Group. I'll get to that in a little bit of detail. After that, I've had a bunch of, I've been super fortunate to have all these like great experiences at a bunch of different financing and finance and operational roles at Square, LinkedIn, NerdWallet, and now here at Facebook. I live in San Francisco, and something personal I'll share, which is great news. We're expecting our first in May. Just so you guys get to know me, we're having our first son, and we're closing on we live in a 1-bedroom apartment. So these are highly correlated. Tomorrow I'm signing on our first house, which is highly correlated to having our first child. So it's a big week this week. So that's a little bit on me. First, and I have some notes here, which you will see me glancing. So I just want to call that out. Public speaking is definitely still something I am working on. But when I think about finance, I'm pretty excited about this because it's a pretty interesting time, I think, to be in finance for a couple of different reasons. Something that when you take a step back that makes me particularly excited, I think is particularly exciting, is everything you're seeing and happening in cloud computing and the cost for processing. It is so quick and cheap relative to what it used to be to start up a new business and scale a new business. Like, it is crazy how quickly you could go from incepting an idea to building a product and getting it into market. And I think that's shifted a lot of like what finance brings to companies, because there's just so much more opportunity out there. And then secondly, because of scale. When you think about what it takes to build a business, in some ways, sometimes as hard as it is to build a product that serves the right use case, sometimes that's not actually the hardest thing to solve, and actually getting a business to go from a nice little thing where product market fit to a really big business that's helping whatever the big number is, lots of customers, lots of users, lots of revenue, lots of profit. Figuring out how to scale is really hard, and finance has a big important role in that. The second thing I think is like pretty exciting is the evolution, how finance is evolving in and of itself. When you think of platforms, I spent time at Square. There was a time where merchants had to call some person who was going to charge them a ton of money to just swipe someone's credit card, and they would rather take cash. Which is, anyone who's ever worked retail, like, and I used to work in clothing retails. It is a pain dealing with cash. I used to have to literally walk. I worked at an Armani exchange store, and I used to have to walk from the store to the bank to deposit all this money. And that's insane. Like, that's so dangerous in New York. I was like, had anyone ever tried to, I'd be like, here, take this. This isn't even mine, And now, like, you're talking about how easy it is to send money to someone in your family, someone in a different country. There's probably more ways than we want to be able to send people capital. When you think about what's happening in crypto, now you have institutional investors getting behind this thing that not everyone still fully understands. it's like finance in and of itself is really changing the game. When I see people who worked at Goldman Sachs now being like tech founders, this is a super different world than it was 15 years ago. So like you guys just getting started, I can't imagine, where we're going to be going, together. So that's a little bit about finance. I like to think about things in threes. And, after talking to Samira and Nick and Aaron, I started reflecting a lot about like what would have been helpful to me when I was back in college. And, there was a time where I had no idea anything about finance. When I always reflect, when I told my mom I got my first job at Goldman, she was like, "Oh, you'd be working banking hours," thinking that was like a good thing. So I get off at like 4 p.m. when it was, more like 4 a.m. on the regular basis. I remember reading this book called Monkey Business, which back then was like one of the classic, like starting to understand finance books, and like watching movies like Boiler Room, which is like a classic. I don't think the world doesn't really operate like this, like stockbroker movie. That's how I got introduced to finance. But a lot of things happened that helped me learn. And I hope these are like three things that I eventually learned. But if helpful to you to learn earlier on your path, I hope this is helpful to you after our time today. So number one, I think in terms of like how you grow and start your careers is to do. Just start doing something. And I'll show two examples of my career where I just did. First was getting my first ever like non-job where I was just trying to like make, my $8 an hour. So I just had some cash to go do stuff. And I was a stockbroker intern, totally free. And I had to get my manager his lunch, physically go to 57th Street every day, pick up his lunch and bring him back. And then I would call people trying to, sell stocks when I only probably had like maybe on a great week, like $30 in my bank account or something like that. So it was just so ridiculous, but by doing it, I started like, getting used to like Bloomberg screens, watching CNBC all the time, reading the Wall Street Journal, which was like a big print physical newspaper back in the day, which is hard to read on a little cramped subway. I got like starting to understand the lingo, and two big outcomes out of that. First, even though I was an undergraduate working at somewhere that was certified, I had to get my Series 7 license. I got my CFA. It just got me exposure to things that I wouldn't have done unless I had that internship. And I started hearing about M&A. And I was like, I think it's so interesting how these companies are just buying other companies to embark on some type of new strategic path. And like that was like a big learning that I got just by interning somewhere. Fast forward, and I'll try to do parallels from like, what was it like super early to something in the middle of my career, just to kind of give you like these themes they never go away. I think they stay pretty consistent. Another example, when I was at the Carlyle Group. So for folks who don't know, the Carlyle Group's a private equity firm where at the end of the day, I think it's something like 200 billion assets that they manage now. We acquire companies, try to operate them better, and ideally in some future world, sell them for more than we acquired them, so we make more money for our investors. And I got really fortunate. We acquired this SaaS company that was doing like accounting software. And back then, like, there's nothing cool. Like, I don't think back then anyone thought, maybe now no one thinks there's anything cool about accounting software. But the cool thing about that situation was it was a smaller deal relative to some of the mega deals that we did at Carlyle. So I kind of had a little bit of a remit to go a little rogue and find interesting projects to do with that portfolio company. And I started working a lot with the company on how to think about pricing, how to expand internationally. And it's funny because back then I literally had no idea what I was doing back then. I mean, back then I think I did, but like now looking back, I definitely didn't. But I got to work with a lot of smart people who did know what they were doing. And like, that was one of the pivotal moments for me where, I don't know if it still exists, but there was a typical track. Like you do your 2 years of banking, you do your 2 years of private equity, you go to GSB or HBS for 2 years, you work at a hedge fund, and then you retire. And I thought I was just going to go do that. But having that experience, really got me exposed to like being an operator and corporate finance. And I was like, I dig this. I like staying with the company and solving gnarly problems. I want to not just put ideas on a slide, but there's a big difference between saying, hey, we should price this product at $10 and then actually selling a product at $10. And I knew I really liked that work. So that's an example of do. The second thing that, is like deep in my DNA is like hustling and putting yourself out there. So this is I remember, I think it might've been you, Aaron. I remember someone was shocked when I said like, hey, I was operating in a pre-LinkedIn world. So, you weren't just like going on LinkedIn and connecting with whoever you wanted. And I distinctly remember I was at this dinner. It was the day after I was an intern at Merrill Lynch. And I was thinking about where to work for full time. I had just got my offer from Merrill, but I wanted to talk to the other banks as well. And I had offers from these other banks, but I couldn't even get an interview. I couldn't even find a person at Goldman Sachs. And I went to some dinner, and there was like sponsored tables and stuff like that. It was like a little fancy dinner. And I was like, I know there's a Goldman dinner. There has to be a Goldman table somewhere in this dinner. Like there has to be. Found the Goldman table as soon as like someone spoke and clapped and he did their thing. It was probably a lot like an event like this for all I know. I went up to the Goldman table, and so did a lot of other people. And I just remember making my quick pitch. And I was like, I just want to talk to one person at Goldman to try to secure interview. Put myself out there, and it worked. I got my interview. It wasn't too long before that. I had my interview, got my job offers. And as much as that's a success story, I could spend hours telling you all the time that I did something similar and it completely blew up in my face and did not work. So I think there's something about just like taking some risks. Fast forward example, when I was at Carlisle, getting that experience with Primatics, and I was like, man, maybe I want to be an operator. This was back in 2011, where like there wasn't really precedent for people with banking backgrounds or consulting backgrounds working in tech. And I would just literally fly to San Francisco to meet someone, maybe just for coffee. Maybe I had 3 coffees. It's a pretty expensive both dollar and time investment just to go somewhere. And mind you, like this is also pre-Zoom and this is pre lots of things. But like that, I wanted to make that personal connection. I wanted to like see what tech was like, and like being in these companies' offices, going to Twitter, going to Airbnb, Dropbox, like seeing how they operate was so different than Carlisle, I wear a suit every day. I had my own office with my big wooden desk. You just see the vibe. And I was like, this is different. How can I learn more? And eventually I met someone who knew someone who worked at Square. I met some folks at Square. They're like, they're like, where did you work before? And I was like, Goldman and Carlisle. They're like, we have no idea what to do with you. Like, what value would you possibly even add? And I just did a project for them for free. And they liked it. They hired me. And I had probably that was probably one of the most formative experiences in my life. 2 years at Square, which was like a true rocket ship. From taking some random tricks and deciding to do this project. So I'd really encourage folks to like just put themselves out there in terms of trying to explore the opportunities that they want and take risks. There's literally no downside. Maybe you waste some time, maybe someone doesn't reply, you'll get hits. And my last and final piece I would say is do this together. The power of many is certainly stronger than the power of one. And like, I really encourage you guys to think of yourselves as a community and think about your pods. For myself, how I live by this today, I have like a network of SaaS CFOs, SaaS VPs who I hit up from time to time when I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like this is a gnarly problem. And I'm trying to get other people's ideas about like how to fix this, being self-aware and being comfortable, being open, be like, yeah, like I think I should do A or B, but most likely the answer is C or D, but I just don't even know how to even formulate C or D. And that's been really helpful to me in here at Facebook, where we're building SaaS finance from the ground up. And like that advice and guidance I've gotten from my peers and friends and mentors has been super helpful. And now if I go reverse, how that worked back in college, we started a similar group, the Fordham Finance Society, my junior year. And that's when we started like, hey, someone would meet a connection and bring them into school and we'd all go. Or we'd share contacts with each other, or share like, hey, we found out about this financial modeling course, sharing resources. I'm sure you guys, work on your school projects together. This is a priority. This is a collaboration effort. I'd encourage folks don't to think about their careers as like being like an IC, but think about it from like an entrepreneurial mindset. and surrounding yourselves with people who want to have that shared outcome and work together. Um, so that's it from me. And I really do sincerely hope that this is somewhat helpful to thinking about how to start a career in finance. But again, like I think those three things, like doing, hustling, and putting yourself out there, and actually working as a group rather than an individual, are three things I think would have helped me if I knew them. If I knew them a little bit earlier when I was in college. That's it.
Okay, awesome. Well, thank you so much, Carl, for that great keynote speech. I personally learned a lot from your speech, and I'm sure everyone else on the call has as well. So, up next, we're going to be having another keynote speaker with us today, John Peters, who is currently a business operations manager at Insight RX. He actually graduated with the degree in finance from Santa Clara University in 2018. And prior to Insight RX, he worked as a business operations analyst at Healthline Media. So thank you so much, John, for taking the time to join us today. And yeah, whenever you're ready to begin.
Cool. Thank you, Samira, and thanks, Carl. That was awesome. So quick intro, I'm John Peters. I graduated from Santa Clara in 2018 with finance major. So I am just like have a tad bit of, incrementally more experience than all of you guys, but it's not a ton at this point. So honestly, I still have a lot of questions that you probably have about our careers and things like that. But what I thought might be useful is just to go through the positions that I've essentially had 3 jobs. Go through each one at a high level and just articulate what was going through my mind in transitioning to each one. And I don't necessarily have any broad insights for you guys about our careers in general, but that immediate experience after college might be helpful as you guys just start to get out there. So I do have, let me see if I can do this. I have a small visual aid here. All right, perfect. Okay, great. So, like I said, I've had 3 jobs. First was at a very small private equity firm, nothing close to the scale of Carlyle. The second one was at a health media company, think like WebMD, WebMD competitor. Third one, where I'm at now, is a precision dosing startup. So in the next couple minutes, I'll just tell you guys a bit about why I chose each one, what I did, what I learned, and why I left. And then we can do questions in the breakout. So the first one, 3P Equity, it was a very small middle market PE firm that focused on investing in industrials and like B2B logistics manufacturing companies. These are pretty small companies. They're like 10 to 20 million EBITDA or profit. And there were 20 of them, or sorry, 12. And I chose to do this my senior year. This was, I worked here during my senior year because it was basically like a high level view of business. Like I didn't really know what real life was after college. And so I figured I could go between classes and get like a overview of 12 different portfolio companies. And we used to joke at 3P that the 12 companies were like an extended family, where one was like the perfect, family member that they met goals every single quarter and like were totally on target. And then there were others that were like the weird, crazy uncle that like always had a problem. And that's exactly how it was. So I was super lucky to do a bunch of projects with these companies and then also assist in the like typical PE sourcing, deal flow, diligence, closing, and then projects throughout the whole period for each of them. So what I did there tactically was a bit of everything in that flow. I did a lot of company diligence. They were launching an EU fund at the time, so I was emailing a lot of investment bankers in Europe, trying to build deal flow, and then got to do some strategic projects with portfolio companies, which were like one, I did a big project with the oil and gas services company in Texas. That was when oil prices had plunged and they didn't know what to do. So it was a bit of everything. And what I learned was communication. You don't really communicate with people in the way that you do working at a private equity firm until you're there. So like coming right out of school, knowing nothing, that was like an immediate, just very tactical thing is how do I write a good email that like people understand is actionable. So basic things like that. And I also developed this appreciation for the scope of the world and how specific a successful business has to be. And what I mean by that is there, like, for example, we had this interest, they had this interest in investing in lighting companies, which I never thought about. And there's like, we did this whole analysis around just companies in track lighting. And there's like the distributor and the wholesaler and the manufacturer and the LED maker. And it's like, you never think about these things until you hop in. And so you kind of see how big the world is and how investors piece through it, which is great. So the key takeaway for me from this job was learning what investors care about. And that I took with me to the next two jobs, and I'll tell you how. So second job, Healthline. This is a media publisher, WebMD competitor. Today, it's actually larger than WebMD in terms of monthly unique users. It's about 100 million in revenue and 300 employees. And it was owned by Summit Partners, which is a private equity firm when I joined. The reason that's important is because I joined in the first or second year of a 4-year hold period. And that means that there was this relentless focus on making the company efficient. This company was growing, but Summit was also interested in making it super efficient. So I joined the newly formed business operations team. And I chose the company because everyone I interviewed with in the interview was just stellar. Like, I just love the people. And it seems like an odd reason to choose a company, but I walked out, I had like 6 interviews, and I said I loved every single one of them, and I went. It was kind of hard to leave 3P, to be honest with you. But the other thing about Healthline is that at 3P, I was kind of worried that I wasn't going to ever get my hands dirty, like doing real projects. Like when they pitched the offer to me to stay, they were like, we're going to send you to board meetings, these companies like all around the country. And in my head, I was thinking, I have no business doing that. Like, I just graduated. Like, what the hell am I going to say at a board meeting? So I just wanted to go get my hands dirty doing something. And Healthline seemed like a good place because they had this analytical rigor and they wanted to get more efficient under their private equity ownership. So I joined the biz ops team and did a lot of internal consulting projects. I was very lucky to go under a manager who had just come from Bain. He was a Bain consultant. So he had this like crazy analytical rigor and basically like put me through the Bain process of career development and things like that. And I did a lot of like data analysis, financial modeling, making recommendations, all around how do we just improve the ROI of every investment. We basically went investment to investment, said, what's the way to improve the ROI of this? And then that kind of turned into like process improvement work with different teams. So I learned at this job the like way that a consultant will approach a problem and that is super valuable. It's every problem is different, but there's a general framework that makes, people from like Bain and BCG and McKinsey very, very able to just break problems down into their component parts and diagnose them and recommend a solution. So I got pretty good at using data to make good business decisions here on acute issues, like specific issues handed to me. What's your recommendation? Last job I'm at now is it's a startup. We do precision dosing software, and I joined because when I interviewed, I saw that this company clearly had product market fit, and they were in execution mode. They had proved the concept, and they had a plan that they articulated pretty well, and said we just have to execute, and we need an ops person to do it. So they were just out of their Series A, about 20 employees, and I call myself the first overhead hire in a more or less self-deprecating way, because everyone at the startup was either a data scientist, an engineer, or a salesperson. There's no one else. So I was, came in. First thing I did was like redo their chart of accounts for their accounting system, like very, very basic stuff. And so I've started to put processes around the back office things like finances, HR, like contracting, legal, stuff like that. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. And what I've learned here is like the guts of a company, basically, like all these things that you don't think about in a smaller role at a big company, like processing payroll and HR things and kind of administrative stuff like that. I now that's all like stuff that they just say, hey, go figure this out. So I enjoy it. It's a lot of different things. And my key takeaway here is how to scale the core operations of a company as it grows pretty quickly. So those are my three roles. I think from your guys' perspective, I might have two takeaways. The first is that finance isn't always what you think of when, like, the first thing that comes to mind. It's not always banking. It's not always hardcore financial analysis. It's not always spreadsheets all day. In my case, at least, finance has been a really, really good tool to go do other things at organizations that are growing. So the basic skill set that you get when you learn finance, like basic analysis and return on investment of different projects and stuff like that, can be used very easily to go help a ton of different companies in a ton of different ways. And I've just helped 3 companies in very small ways, but you can go do a lot of different things. It's not always the stereotype. And then the second thing that I just wanted to conclude with is that I like many of you had no idea what I wanted to do when I graduated. I still don't know what I want to do, honestly. The only thing that I knew and I know now is that it's someday in the future, I want to start my own business. And that's kind of been the only constant in my mind. And each of these decisions I have said, is this going to prepare me for that end goal? And I think each has in its own way. And that desire is probably different than like Carl's desire, if I were to guess. But it has guided each of these jumps. So I'm not really in a position to give a ton of advice 3 years out, but if I had to, it would be to look at your finance degree or whatever degree you're getting is just a tool to do what you want. And it only really makes sense if you know something about what you want first, and then you can figure out how to use the tool. So in my case, I'm trying to use my tool to prepare to start and run my own business, which is why I've been a bit more operational with my finance degree. So that's it. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have in the breakouts.
Thanks, John, and thanks, Carl. So we're gonna get moving into the breakout rooms. So on top of John and Carl, we also have 5 awesome breakout leaders. The first is Jerica Schlachter. Sorry if I mispronounced that. A finance analyst at Apple working on its US carrier sales finance team. Next, we have Philip Barber, an investment banking analyst at Bank of America, and John Burke, who works in growth investing at TCV, a growth equity fund firm in Menlo Park. Lauren Dillard, a chief communications officer and head of investor relations at LiveRamp, and Jake Cunningham, who works in payment operations and partnerships at Square. So we're going to go into the first breakout room for about 20 minutes and then switch speakers again for the breakout for a second session. So
while we're waiting for others to come back, I just want to tell everyone that this meeting has been recorded. So in case you want to revisit or you want to tell your friend about this event and they want to check it out, we'll post this on the finance website so you can all have access to it afterwards. It's great insight shared by Carl and John. That's awesome. We're going to start our second breakout sessions. So you will go to the same room as before, but then we're going to manually rotate the host. So you get to meet different people. All right. Our Zoom Master Scott will kick off the second session really soon.
All right, enjoy everyone. Well, maybe just to wrap a little bit, first of all, we just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for making the time, to the students, to the grad students. Santa Clara is a really special place, and it's because of the people. So thank you for carving out time to come and meet other folks kind of built careers around the finance ecosystem. You know, would love to thank the Student Association. So Samira, Aaron, Nicholas, the entire group that helped put this whole event on, to thank the faculty, especially Carrie, who's played a big role in making this happen. And last but not least, just to your breakout session leaders. These are pretty incredible individuals that have built awesome careers in their respective fields. And so I'm hugely appreciative to John and Lauren and Jerica and Jake and Philip for carving out some time to spend with all of you. And then to our keynote leaders, Carl and John, thank you. That was awesome. Really incredible insight. And lastly, look, we're here, all of us, the faculty, the board, the Student Association, and the breakout session and keynote leaders, to be resources to all of you. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Feel free to connect with any of us, shoot us notes on LinkedIn, reach out to Carrie, whoever it may be. But hugely grateful to be part of the Santa Clara community, and thank you, everybody. This was a lot of fun and hopefully really valuable for everybody. So